This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 6, Lesson 6. In this lesson, we're going to continue looking at fractions written in decimal form. The directions say that the shaded model represents the number. We're to write the number as a decimal and then estimate to find the number on the number line. You can see the number has first been written in fraction form as a mixed numeral. So that tells me I have one whole, and that would be this part of the model, and 15 hundredths. Well, 15 hundredths is the same thing as 1/10 and 5 hundredths. So my 1/10 is here and my 5 hundredths is there. Now to write this as a decimal, we would say we have one whole, we have 1/10, and we have 5 hundredths. I could also read that as 1 and 15 hundredths. Now, to find that point on the number line, I know that it will fall in between one whole and two wholes. So here's my one whole, here's the two wholes. And then I also know that I have 1/10 and 5 hundredths. That means it's going to be in between the one whole and 1/10 and one whole and 2/10. So if I find that point, here's my one whole and 1/10, one whole and 2/10. So my point will be found somewhere along that line in between those 2/10. Let's look at another example. This time my mixed number is 2 and 47 hundredths. You can see that we have our two wholes here, our 4/10 here, and our 7 hundredths here. Let's write that as a decimal. I have two wholes, 4/10, and 7 hundredths. I could also read that as 2 and 47 hundredths. Now to find this one on the number line, well, I'm going to be between 2 and 3. So here's two wholes and 3 wholes. And then I'm going to be in between 2 and 4/10 and 2 and 5/10. So here's 2 and 4/10, here's 2 and 5/10. So that point will be somewhere in between those two numbers. In the next section, we have the number written in unit form, and we are going to write it as a fraction and as a decimal. Part A says I have 1 and 2 hundredths. So 1 would be in my ones place. If I have 2 hundredths, that means that I need to put the 2 in the second place over from the decimal point. This is the tenths place, this is the hundredths place. So that's what the number would look like as a decimal. As a fraction, I would have one whole and 2 hundredths. In question B, I also have 1 in my whole numbers place. Now I have 17 hundredths. So I'm going to write the number 17 so it lands in the hundredths place. And as a mixed number, I would have one whole and 17 hundredths. In this section, we're going to draw lines from the unit form of a number to the decimal form to the fraction form. The directions point out that all unit forms and fractions have at least one match, and some have more than one match. For example, if I drop down to this one that says 7 ones and 3 tenths, I know that I can match it with this decimal, 7 ones and 3 tenths. I can also match it with the top decimal because 7 ones and 3 tenths is the same thing as 7 ones and 30 hundredths. So we can make that match as well. And 7 ones and 3 tenths in fraction form is the same as 7 ones and 30 hundredths, and 7 and 30 hundredths in decimal form is the same as 7 and 30 hundredths in fraction form. So there's an example where one number can have two matches.